All right, in this video, we're going to look at how to create a brand new log entry. So I might have a guitar that I want to add to the log. I may or may not know if it's even in here, but first of all, we allow visitors to do a lot of things in the log. You can browse all the information, search, you can even submit an anonymous information you might have about an existing entry. But to register a brand new entry, you need to be registered as a member of the log and signed in. And once you're there, there's a few different places where you can register gear. In the quick actions here, there's a register gear link. You can also go wherever you are in the site, click on your picture up at the top right and say register gear. The first step of registering new gear is you need to specify the category, model, different attributes that are kind of core to how we organize it within the site. For category, we're really only supporting three things at kind of the launch here, which is bass guitars, electric guitars, and loose serial numbers. Again, in the future, we might expand to things like amplifiers or steels or who knows what. I want to call out loose serial numbers specifically because I actually think this is a really important part of the log. Imagine if you were about to buy a very, very expensive, maybe it's a 1950 broadcaster. I would imagine you want to do all the due diligence you can on that guitar. And it would be super valuable, I think, if you could learn that that bridge with that serial number was at one point offered for sale as a loose bridge on Reverb or eBay or something like that. That would kind of indicate that the guitar was parted together. That's super valuable information that could save you from a pretty big purchase. Now, I have no problem with parted together guitars as long as it's disclosed. So we think loose serial numbers are a big part of this log. If you see one on, some sort of marketplace, go and log it. You don't have to be the owner of any gear in here to submit it. It's one of the questions we'll see that's a part of this. So what I'm going to do is click on electric guitars. I'm going to try to submit a 1954 Stratocaster that I own, which is serial number 1004. And when I do that, it's going to immediately say, hey, wait, that's already in the log. If you're the rightful owner, go validate your ownership here. So I just wanted to point out that we are doing a validation to try to eliminate duplicates within the log. It's really important that we try to keep some data integrity with what's being put in the log. Another thing I'll point out here on serial number is that we will support guitars without a serial number. This was a big issue with the previous log where, a Blackguard, the serial number is on the bridge. Well, what happens if you swap the bridge out for a Bigsby or some other style, maybe like Keith Richards uses? And so we could never log those guitars. Now you can simply say, hey, there's no serial number present. Another good example of a guitar that may not have a serial number is early 54 Strats. The serial number was on the trim cover, which is just a piece of plastic. Half the time it got removed so that you could more easily restring the guitar. So again, both loose serial numbers and no serial numbers are very important to the log. Well, in this case, I'm going to submit a different guitar since my 54 is already in there. I'm going to submit a 57 Stratocaster and its serial number is 024445. Now, it's important to note that I'm putting the 0 in front of this. We think that's an important part of the serial number is any preceding zeros, or in some cases there may be a dash in front of it. You really should include all of that when you're submitting a guitar with a known serial number. So anyway, I'll go ahead and move off this, and you can see that, hey, it doesn't exist in the log. We're good to go here. The next step is, do I currently own this gear? Now, I did own this guitar, but I've since sold it, and so I don't currently own it. I'll say no for that. Again, we highly encourage you to submit gear even if you don't own it. Maybe it's something that you saw online. Maybe it's something that a friend of yours that's not as tech savvy owns. We'd love to collect as much information as we can. That's the whole purpose of this log, is to try to gather information so that we can gain new insights. Now, in order for it to become visible to the public, it needs to go through validation. And there's a few ways we can validate a new entry like this. One is manually. You can put a link to some photos in here. There's a manual validation step. Or you can try an auto validation step. And what this is if you have a really good picture of the serial number, you can provide that, and we can, through some fancy algorithms, try to do some validation that, hey, we can see that this is a neck plate and it has this serial number, so we're going to let it kind of go in and be automatically validated. I'm going to actually try that approach. It may not work here because my picture of the serial is pretty blurry, but we'll go ahead and give it a shot. So here it is. You can see it's pretty blurry, but you can see that preceding 0 is important. And I'll go ahead and click next. So this is going to submit it back to the log. And in this case, it says, hey, we were unable to automatically validate it. So all that means is it's going into an approval queue for an admin to look at. No one will be able to see this entry until it gets approved by an administrator. So I still can provide some additional information. And what you see here are various attributes that are very specific to a 1957 Stratocaster. The attributes that are relative to a 1957 Stratocaster might be completely different from a 54 Stratocaster or a 64 Stratocaster. So all these attributes are very specific to the year and model. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and it's pre-populated some kind of defaults. I could change this if it was a different color. I can go and say it's original body finish, original neck finish. The neck date is 12/57. The body date is also 12/57 on this. And the location of the body date is in the pickup cavity. And let's see, I don't know a lot of this. Let's go ahead. This is ABS plastics. So again, this is a good example. This is around the era that the plastics changed on the Strat. And so this attribute may not be relevant for some other years. And then I'll say 7.6 pounds. It did have the original Redline tweed case. And for the description, I'm going to say super clean 57 Strat, also featured in the Fender 75 year book. If you have notable ownership, like maybe a celeb owned it, you could put that here. The status, I don't know where it is now. If I had a YouTube video of it, I could put a link to that YouTube video. And then finally, I can provide some images. Now, we support, you can put as many images as you want. In this case, for the sake of time, I'm just going to use one image. And then I have the ability of putting a permanent watermark. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's necessary, and I'll show you why, but I'll show you kind of both. In this case, what I'll do is go ahead and save the entry. It'll bring it over here. Again, it's not approved yet, so only myself and an administrator can see it, but at least here I can kind of get a good feel for what it looks like. Now, here's why I don't think the watermark is all that necessary. I can't just, like normally in a web page, you can right click a photo and save it. I can't do that here. We're kind of preventing that. Now, if you're really savvy, you could figure out how to do it. But in this case, you'd have to kind of be pretty knowledgeable about how websites work to be able to get that image. Another option here is, again, I'll go ahead and edit this. And I'm going to now put on the watermark and click save. And so now it'll take a second for it to load. It might be hard to see, but there is a watermark over this. And it's a permanent watermark. So even if you were able to get this image somehow, it's going to have that watermark across the entire image. And so that's an option you can use for the images that you provide on your gear. I personally don't use the watermark, but if that's something you're sensitive of, you can certainly do that. And again, it can't be removed. So with this, we have successfully submitted our first entry into the log. In this case, it is pending approval, but an admin will get to that and it should eventually show up in my profile. So if I go here to profile, you can see I have some owned gear and then submitted gear, and you can see that entry that we just created, and it's in a status of pending. If I had said I own it, it would show up here in owned gear. But anyway, that's how you create a new log entry.